Hey, good morning, North Harbor. It is the first Sunday of Christmas 2021. And just a few days ago, on Christmas Eve, we talked about Jesus with us, Emmanuel, God with us, and how that's such an important theme for the Advent and the Christmas season. And so I wanted to follow up. On that night, we talked a little bit about how we can we can use the wrong prepositions with God. That Emmanuel means God with us. It doesn't mean God over us. Doesn't mean us from God, life from God. Doesn't mean life under God. Doesn't mean life over God. But it means life with. And we talked about the importance of that idea that God is with us in everything. I mean, with Jesus and the coming of the Spirit, that God is with us at all times, in all places. And so the nature of discipleship or following Jesus is really becomes an issue of learning how to nurture that relationship, to be with Jesus. And we talk a lot about spiritual disciplines such as prayer and silence and solitude and corporate worship and learning, lots of different things. But I want to follow up, oddly enough, Christmas Eve service and the message and the devotional I gave that night with another thought, kind of the opposite. What is life without Jesus like? What would that be like if we were without Jesus? And interestingly enough, the first Sunday of Christmas is a story about without Jesus. It kind of captures that idea, and it captures some of the emotion and the things that happen when we feel like we are without Jesus. And so let's start reading. The reading is out of Luke chapter 2, starting in verse 41. And it says, "Every year, Jesus' parents went to Jerusalem for the Passover festival. When Jesus was 12 years old, they attended the festival as usual. After the celebration was over, they started home to Nazareth. But Jesus stayed behind in Jerusalem. His parents didn't miss him at first because they assumed that he was with friends among the other travelers. But when he didn't show up that evening, they started to look for him among the relatives and the friends. When they couldn't find him, they went back to Jerusalem to search for him there. 3 days later, they finally discovered him. He was at the temple, sitting among the religious leaders, discussing deep questions with them. And all who heard him were amazed at his understanding and his answers. The parents didn't know what to think. "Son," his mother said to him, "why have you done this to us? Your father and I have been frantic, searching for you everywhere." And Jesus answers, "But why did you need to search?" he asked. "You should have known that I would be in my Father's house." But they didn't understand what he meant. Then he returned to Nazareth with them and was obedient to them. And his mother stored all these things in her heart. So Jesus grew both in height and in wisdom, and he was loved by God and all who knew him. So here we have a story where they lose him. They lose Jesus. And so right off the bat, when I read this, there's a couple things that jump out. The term Jerusalem, they're in the city of Jerusalem. This is the heartbeat of Judaism. Sort of like if Jerusalem falls, then the whole nation falls. This is where the temple is located. Jesus is at the temple. That is believed to be the presence of God for Jews in that day. That is where you would go to meet with God. To meet with God would be at the temple. That's where Jesus is. So there's some symbolism going on there. It's the Passover celebration. This looks forward to Jesus' crucifixion on the cross. He's called the Lamb of God. And then it says that they searched for him for 3 days. So also sort of a foreshadowing of the resurrection and Jesus being in the ground for 3 days. But all this focuses on this idea of the temple and being with God, and that's where Jesus is at. So they're leaving the Passover celebration, and it's a much more communal society back then. So Jesus is probably, they think that he's traveling with other family members or other friends. You know, you'd travel in a large group of people so that you wouldn't get robbed on the way and things like that. And so they just assume Jesus is hanging out with the friends. And then when they realize they can't find him, they start to panic. I remember a time going to Popham Beach and was there, and the kids were young, and Sophie was just, she was my oldest, she was there, and it was very crowded. And at one point, I couldn't figure out where she was, and I just all of a sudden realized I don't know where she is, and I panicked. I just started calling, yelling her name, jumped up. You know, people probably think I'm kind of nuts. You know, the irresponsible dad lost his daughter, and I just couldn't see her, and I just started yelling her name, and I just remember that feeling. First of all, being at a beach, maybe she wandered into the water, maybe someone took her, maybe she's just lost, looking for me. I don't know, but that panic that sets in when it's like, oh, I couldn't find her. And it turns out she was just sitting behind some people not far from me, but I just couldn't see her. She was just, you know, building a sandcastle or something. But that feeling of panic. Now, here's what I want us to consider. In this situation, Jesus' parents are without Jesus. In the sense, they feel like they've lost him. They don't know where he is. They're panicking, and they are frantic, as Mary mentions here. They're frantic looking for him. I want us to think about today, and in the coming week, this is the challenge for today. I want you to think about those areas of your life, the compartments of your life. Hopefully we're not too compartmentalized, but you know, we want to integrate all things into our lives. But sometimes we get compartmentalized, and we might think, Jesus isn't with the financial part of my life, or Jesus isn't in this one relationship, or I went through this one trial that I'm trying, you know, this one struggle, maybe some trauma when I was a kid, and I can't seem to get any footing moving forward, and it doesn't seem like Jesus is there. So typically what we ask is, where do you feel most connected with Jesus? I've asked our youth, I've asked the kids, I've asked adults, I've done it on Sunday morning. Where do you see God at work? We ask that question a lot here at North Harbor. But here we're asking, where don't you see Jesus? You know, because what's going to happen in those areas is we're going to get frantic. And I love what happens here. His parents didn't know what to think. Son, his mother said to him, this is verse 48, why have you done this to us? Your father and I have been frantic, searching for you everywhere. And I love the way that's put. Why have you done this to us? And oftentimes we approach God with the same question, like, how come you let this happen? Where are you in this situation? So I want us to think about, those areas where we feel like God isn't there. Let's take time to meditate on that. What part of your lives do you feel like God is absent? And sometimes we get angry at God about that, and we kind of lash out. Of course, right, we all know where this is going, is trying to figure out if we can identify that one. Don't think too hard about it. Whatever the first one or two things that come to your mind, you stick with that. And then think about it all this week. Why do I feel like Jesus is absent there? What can I do to bring him in? Because Jesus, his response to this is great. Why did you need to search? Why do you need to search for me? You should have known I would be about my Father's house. Jesus is about his Father's business. He's doing the will of the Father. You see this especially in the Gospel of John, where Jesus says, I see what the Father is doing, and that's what I'm doing. So when you see me, you've seen the Father. So there's this very close connection between Jesus and the Creator, God, Father, and Jesus is about that work. That work is going on. It's not that Jesus has abandoned us. It's perhaps that we just aren't looking in the right place. And so the challenge this week is to think about those ways in which we can bring Jesus into those areas that he seems distant or seems absent or seems like he just hasn't gotten on with the program yet or something like, I don't know. But instead of looking for those areas where you already feel connected, where do you feel disconnected? Identify that, and I want you to be thinking about that and bring it to Jesus in prayer. Because prayer is where we nurture that relationship, and prayer is where that absence, if we bring Jesus into it, we will get a sense of his presence, more stronger presence in our lives, and it will be throughout more of our lives. And we all have it. I have it. I have areas where I don't think about God that much. And then sometimes I wonder, where are you, God? Well, I haven't nurtured that. So think about that. That's the challenge for this coming week. And then I will post another follow-up for the second Sunday of Christmas on January 2nd. We will not be having service that day either. I hope you're all well. I hope you're enjoying the holidays, and we'll see you back in person service on January 9th. But check in next week for the follow-up to this devotional series. All right.